Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about Athol Fugard's play Statements After an Arrest under the Immorality Act. In my previous video about Sizwe Bonsi is Dead, I said that Fugard is one of my favorite playwrights, and I have read a bunch of his plays and I really generally like them. I'm not that much of a fan of Statements After an Arrest under the Immorality Act. There are some good things about it. There are some things that work, but for my money, it's a little too fragmented in ways that don't necessarily work, and it tries to be very pointed about a direct political message, but it tries to blend that with some sort of experimental theater techniques in a way that for me it's too much all over the place for me. It doesn't really work. So the basic plot line is that a man so he's listed as man in the dialogue. And the woman is listed as woman in the dialogue. The policeman is listed as policeman. But they all have actual names. So the woman is Frida Joubert, the man who's colored, which under the apartheid ethnic ranking system was a term that meant someone was of African descent but also had another ethnicity. So they might be part white, they might be part Asian, whatever it is. So his name is Athol Fugard. And then the policeman's name is Detective Sergeant J. Duprez. Sorry, I don't know why I pronounced that like it was French. J. period. It's initial J. Duprez. So Frida and Errol she's white, he's colored. Under apartheid law, it was illegal for them to have a sexual relationship. They nevertheless develop a sexual relationship because he is very interested in learning, and he's extremely intelligent. He has a great mind for geology, anthropology, physics, biology, things like this. He has a great scientific mind, and so he comes to the library where Frida worked to borrow books in order to take these correspondence courses. And that it becomes the sort of starting point of their relationship. The first half of this play, they are together in this library, and they're talking through their sort of interpersonal problems, the difficulties of their relationship, which has to be kept secret, the challenges of his trying to learn, trying to improve himself, the challenges of their relationship because he is cheating on his wife with Frida. So this is an adulterous relationship. He also has children, and he's not going to leave them. So there's that whole aspect to it. In the second half of the play, and actually the first half of the play is fairly straightforward, is to me not fantastically interesting. The one thing about the first half of the play that I do find really interesting is Errol's fascination with long time spans. So he at one point describes this epiphany that he has where he's reading a book about evolution, and there's this line, no vestige of a beginning and no prospect of an end. And he hits this line in the book, and it's this sort of revelation to him about his place in the vastness of geological time, which is, of course, and not in the standard sort of, I felt minuscule and unimportant in comparison to the vastness of the cosmos, but in the sense of like, I have a place in eternity, even if it's a small place, an unimportant place in cosmological terms. It's a place that will never exist again and never be occupied again. So it's an interesting idea, and we get this in some of Fugard's other plays, these sort of appeals to big ideas. Master Harold and the Boys, for instance, which I haven't done a video on, but I probably will at some point. There's a lot of discussion in that play about big ideas, democracy, religion, history, philosophy, geography, etc., etc. The other thing that we get in this first half of the play that's very overtly political is discussion of this water crisis. So in his town, Bontrug, there's a drought. In her town, she lives in it. So they live in different areas because in apartheid South Africa, different ethnic groups were divided up into different geographic locations. So she has much more access to water because she's white and she lives in the white area. He has very limited access to water, and so she offers to send him home with some of her water, and he refuses. And she says, "I'm not trying to be kind. It's only water, and you need it." He says, "We all do." And she says, "Exactly. So your family must suffer because of your pride?" And he asks in disbelief, "Pride?" Well, she says, "It sounds like it." He says, "Pride doesn't use back doors." She says, "Shh, please." He says, "Or wait until it's dark. You don't walk the way I do between the location and town with pride." She says, "Please don't. Let's argue tonight." He says, "Okay." Then we get stage directions. Defeated by her apparent lack of understanding, he turns away from her to his clothes. For a few seconds he tries to sort them out, then stops. He confronts her again. "Water, water, man, you know, water. I wanted to wash before I came here tonight. Your water. You want to send me some of your water?" Is it so hard to understand? Because if you can't, why do you think it's easy? Is that what I look like? Is that why they're so nice to me out there? Because I'm easy? But when for once I feel so buggered up inside that I say no instead of yes. I'm proud. I teach children how to spell that word. I say to them, proud. I say to them, proud as a peacock. Me, holding my breath and sweating, really sweating, man, because suddenly we heard something and I thought, they found us, run. Coming here tonight, I heard a car coming from the location. I hid under that little bridge under the spruit. People relieved themselves there. I was on my hands and knees among the shit, waiting for that car to pass so that Bontrug wouldn't start asking, why is the meester walking into town every night? No, please listen, I must talk. When I take that same walk just now, back, out there in the dark where the tar and the light ends, where the stones start, I'm going to sit down and say to myself, back home again, and hate it. Yeah, hate it. Bon true. The Brocs, that's dogs, that run out at me when I get home, or when I get there, my school, the children I teach, my home, the same world I looked at a year ago and said, mine, and was excited that I was there in it. Easy to hate, man, when you suddenly find that you're always walking back to it. And I am. Whatever happens, I'm going to be there walking back to it. So I say to myself, careful, Philander, it's yours. It's all you can ever really have. Love it. You've got to. Sometimes that's easy too, but you see, even when I do, there's still you. I'm in the shit, hey? That's how I walk now between Bontrug and the town. One way guilty, back with. I'll tell you something else. Coming here once, in the old days, I passed a man and a woman and their child, little boy, going back to the location. They got names, but it doesn't matter. You don't know them. They had stopped halfway up the hill to rest. It's hard walking up there with the sun on your back. All three of them, hot and unwashed, they smell. Because I was coming to you, you know what I saw? Rags. I don't mean their clothes. The people inside looked like rags. The man drinks too much, he's a useless rag. The woman's an old rag. The child is going to be somebody's good rag until... What do you do with yours? I was looking at my feet when I walked past them, Frida. When I realized that, when I realized what I wanted to call them and bring them with me to the library. I wanted to knock on that back door and stand there with them when you opened it. I wanted you to see me with them. What would you have done? Asked the men? Called them Meester and Mrs.? Would you have given them tea in your cups? How long before you would have started waiting for them to go? You understand now, the reason I don't want your water is just because Bontrog is thirsty. She says, and that is not pride? He says, no, exactly the opposite. Shame. So, I mean, we've got, again, these big political ideas that they're there, but for me, this is not one of Fugard's most sophisticated handlings of the inhumanity of apartheid, of the inequality of resource distribution in South Africa, and things like this. It's very, I don't know. To me, it's a sort of clumsily direct way of dealing with it. Then we get to the second half of the play, which starts with the police officer, Detective Sergeant J. Duprez, coming on and basically giving a sort of report, reading out a witness statement, etc., that, and then sort of narrating how Frida and Errol were arrested. Then we switch back to the scene with Frida and Errol, and we get this kind of nightmare dream sequence type thing. So whereas in the first half of the play we have a very realistic presentation of a conversation between two lovers, here we get into a nightmare type approach, blended again with this policeman giving direct reports from official documentation. So one of the things that happens as part of this nightmare sequence is that there are camera flashes that mark sort of transitions between ideas or between little sections of the scene, and then the characters Errol and Frida are lit with flashlight lights. A lot of it is them providing sort of explanation, background, etc., but at one point we get this really kind of bizarre bit where Errol is repeating something that he said earlier. He says, there's no water left in Bontrug. The dam's empty. Little mud left for the goats. They're going to start bringing in for us on Monday. We've been told to be ready with our buckets of 12, 2 for each house. And he just sort of keeps repeating this bit to Frida, and she keeps trying to get him to stop and telling him that he's already said this. And he, as he repeats it, he gets more and more into this sort of stereotypical kind of minstrel show type performance of a colored person. This sort of stereotypical South African version. The stage directions at one point say, equivalently, his performance degenerates more and more. It later says, the man's performance is now degenerated into a grotesque parody of the servile, cringing, colored. So we've got this breakdown of the performance, breakdown into this sort of stereotypical performance, but it only lasts for a very short amount of time. And then it's completely, like, it doesn't fit that well into the larger structure of the play. And I think that, for me, is the problem with Statements, is just a lot of bits and pieces are there, but they don't mesh really well.